Hello, welcome to another episode of Cruising with Doc Speed. Today we have the honor of being with Mr. Don Roberts, a very well-known drag racer from way back in the day, and an awesome car guy. And we had the privilege of meeting at a car show. We'll get into that later. But Don, thank you for having us in your home.
Oh, welcome to our home. We sincerely appreciate having you guys here.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Margie. Thank you as well. Anyway, Don, you really are a local guy. I mean, you're well known in the drag racing circles, but you're a local guy. You were born in Stoneham, Mass. You grew up in Reading.
Grew up in Reading, yes, so indeed.
That's not too far from where I grew up. But so obviously you were bitten at an early age. You must have been with the car scene.
Reading was a fantastic place to be when you were a kid, because they had hot rods everywhere. They had race cars on trailers, from the Orientals Hot Rod Club that I grew, I wound up tagging along with all of them guys in the old days.
And they got you working on cars, didn't they?
They had me working on cars, they had me polishing cars, they had me cleaning parts. They had me doing all the stuff that I loved. Truly.
They're like, oh, we got one here, let's reel them in and get them going.
That was okay, because that was, in some manner, shape, or form, I had hoped that all of the tasks that were put in front of me one day would come to fruition, and I would get an opportunity to get in one of these cars.
You sent me some great pictures from your career over the years, and there was one picture in particular where you must have been maybe 3 years old, I don't even know. And you were sitting there, you'd know anyway that it was you, by the way, from that picture. But the expression on your face says, "Bring it on." I'm like, he knew at that age he was going to be a competitor. You had to, come on.
That's a very special picture. That was one of my mom's, favorite pictures of me when I was a little boy. It's really cool.
Every mom has one. Yeah. So how were you exposed to drag racing?
It started with Burson's Pharmacy in Reading, Massachusetts, at the magazine section. You'd have Hot Rod Magazine, you'd have Carcraft, you'd have Rod and Custom. I would look at all of those things, and I would read the print off the pages. And I'd put them back and never buy one, but I would look at them. And I got to be friends with a lot of the Orientals Hot Rod Club guys in the old days, because my folks were divorced, so they all treated me like a brother, a cousin. They were my dads.
Right.
They were a lot of things to me.
It's a very common thing in the car culture. We still have it today.
Oh yeah. And I got to go to the races in Sanford, Maine with some of the guys, but in 1963, the first professional race car I ever saw that came from California who turned into be a dear friend, was Tommy Ivo. And I got the courage up to ask Ivo, I said, "You're from Burbank, California. Why did you come all the way to Sanford, Maine to race your car?"
Right.
And he looked at me and he smiled and he says, "They paid me to be here." And the light flashed in my head that you're going to get paid to race your car?
Yeah.
I want to do that.
Yeah. There you go.
That set the ball.
That made the impression right there. You were ready to go.
Right then and there, I said, if he can do it, I can do it. So paying your dues and going through and learning every bit of the car. And knowing what it was, what it is, what it could be. What it could do to you if you weren't paying attention.
I mean, all kinds of motorsports, I think the best drivers are the ones who understand how a car works.
Yes. That was in 1968. That was the American Hot Rod Association Nationals at Santa Mauritius, Long Island, New York. It happened there every year for 5 or 6 years. And the professional categories, top fuel dragsters, funny cars, top gas dragster, which was the car that I was racing. And we did very well with that car at New England Dragway. And we went to the big race for the AHRA Nationals. And we won the event, set top speed, set low ET. And I was 20 years old. And that was pretty heads-up stuff for a 20-year-old kid.
That's amazing.
The farthest I had ever been was the state of Maine, the state of New Hampshire. I'd never been to New York.
Right.
And it was really cool.
You went down there and showed them how New England does it, right?
I showed them how I did it.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, absolutely. So, 1968, we had a little interruption in your career.
Oh boy, November 15th, 1968, and there I go with the dates again because they all mean something.
Yep.
I got drafted into the Army
Mm-hmm.
through the Wakefield, Massachusetts Draft Board, and left out of Logan Airport, went to Fort Jackson in Columbia, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Had basic training, went through that, got shipped out of there, went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky for a few months, and then got orders to go to Vietnam.
Mm.
So I came home in April for a 30-day leave before I went to Vietnam.
Right.
But there was one more drag race.
There was.
One more drag race that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it was on May 4th, 1969.
Mm.
The only problem with that date was I was supposed to be in Fort Lewis, Washington
Mm-hmm.
to leave for Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
I was AWOL. I said, what was the worst thing that they could do to me at this point in time? Send me to Vietnam?
Yeah, there you go.
Which I was going there anyway.
Right.
So I showed up Fort Lewis 3 days late, and they threatened me with everything under the sun. I wound up in funny cars. I drove a lot of top fuel dragsters before I got to the funny cars.
Okay.
But the reason I wound up in the funny cars is the dragster match race business was starting to go away. That was being replaced with the funny cars, and I had a choice: drive the funny car or do nothing.
Or get phased out.
Or get phased out. And I
Right.
didn't want to be phased out.
No,
So
no, I'm sure
went,
you didn't.
I drove, went to 5 or 6 different Nitro Funny cars in my time. I liked them. They were great cars.
Yeah.
But my heart was with the dragsters, and
Yeah.
I always will be.
What's it like sitting in a funny car? This is just my curiosity versus an open dragster.
They start up the same, they sound the same,
Yeah.
and then someone at the front of the car pushes it up, and another gentleman takes the body pole out,
Yep.
and down comes the body. And everything changes at that point.
You feel a little trapped, or
No, not trapped, but you certainly know that something is around you.
Yep.
There's a windshield in front of you.
Mhm.
And when you do a burnout, the inside of the car fills up with smoke.
That's probably the biggest difference right there.
Yeah, but they're a lot of fun. And if you wanted to race, that's what you did. And that's why I
You
did.
do what you had to do. The Boston Shaker. That was a well-known car here to us in the Boston area. How'd you end up with that?
1973, my very good friend, Al Segrini, was driving that car for Kosti Ivanov. And Al had a new car come his way and a new opportunity.
You got the phone call.
Yes. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from the principals that owned the Jade Grenade. One of them, the gentleman, his name was Bill Fleur, and who was in partnership with a gentleman by the name of John Asher, who was an NHRA photographer from Phoenix. And they said, "Gee, we'd like to have you drive our car." Great. I couldn't believe this was the next step.
Mm-hmm.
This was going to be NHRA
Right.
full-time professional drag racing that I had worked so hard
Right.
to get to that point. And the first race was New England Dragway for a match race in Epping, New Hampshire. And I had never driven the car before. Not a big deal. I had driven a lot of cars I had never driven before.
Sure.
I got in them and I drove them because that's what I did. But on the first run in the Jade Grenade, it was a 40-mile-an-hour crosswind. There were some aerodynamic things that were done to the front wheels to cover them more for aesthetics than anything else. But the car got away from me. It went over. It rolled, it crashed, it banged. It took 15 minutes, for it to complete its bad stuff. But the end result was the car was destroyed. I was pretty beat up. My leg was broken badly below my right knee, my right leg below my right knee. And in the end, a couple of weeks later, some infection had set in. So the medical folks had to remove that leg from below the knee, and it was May 2, 1975. It is a minor inconvenience. That's all it will ever be. And I get around fine. I'm okay.
You know what? It's an old cliche, but it's true. This shifted your career trajectory?
Yeah, everything stopped when that happened.
Right.
Going forward with a driving career, the phone stopped ringing. Roberts is a bad driver. We don't want him in any cars because
Right.
because he had one problem. I drove 24 different cars
Yeah.
in my time.
Yeah.
I had one bad day. That's all it was. That's all it's ever going to be.
Yeah.
But the phone wasn't ringing and nothing was going on, and I had the opportunity to take a position at New England Dragway. And on June 1st, 1976, I assumed the promotions department and the marketing manager office, and spent 7 glorious years at New England Dragway, one of my favorite places because I have been there since day one. I was there before day one, helping build a place. And one of my dearest, fondest places in the whole wide world is New England Dragway. And I had the chance, along with Jack Doyle, to promote some of the biggest and best professional drag racing programs that the East Coast has ever seen.
Oh, I remember.
I'm proud of that.
I remember those days.
I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, you guys did a great job.
We did do a great
Yeah,
job.
you
There'll
did.
be some out there that say, no. We did a great job.
Well, even the greatest tragedies can bring some humor. There's a very famous quote, which I think is probably the #1 quote for drag racing events ever. You want to tell the folks what it is?
How can Roberts laugh at a crazy, sad situation?
Yeah.
But I've made up my mind a long time ago that through all of this, you've got to find something in it that has a ray of sunshine. And one day, someone had, because people know about this car, this accident that day, and one day someone asked me, gee, what was that like? And I looked at them and I smiled and I said, after the third flip, I lost control.
There you go.
And that was one of the funniest things I think anybody could ever have for a comeback
Right.
in such a bizarre situation. But no, I refuse to let that day dictate the rest of my life, and I will not live in sadness. It made me a better person. It made me a stronger person. It made me appreciate my wife that I have today for almost 41 years, our family, our grandkids, those are all the things that really matter the most.
Yep.
And you take a bad situation like the day of the Jade Grenade, and you try to put a comical spin on it. I think it puts people at ease that Roberts isn't too uptight about this. He's okay.
And it gives you a perspective on everything.
My perspective on everything is outstanding
Yep.
because it has to be.
Yep. Don, this has been a great opportunity. Thank you so much for inviting us into your home and having this discussion. Amazing story. There's so much more to Don's career to come up, in which we will cover in part 2 of this episode. If you like this content, please give us a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming content from this channel. Until next time, happy motoring.